Hello and welcome back. In the previous video, I explained the WP REST server dispatch method, detailing how it processes the REST API requests, applies filters, and handles errors. In this video, I'll focus specifically on respond to request method to explain how it constructs and returns the final response. In this method, you can see the REST request before a callback is executed. If you want to filter the response before executing any REST API callbacks, you can do it here. If the filtered response is not an instance of WP error class and is not empty, then the method will proceed. If the permission callback is provided, it will be called to check whether the required permissions are in place. The method then returns the filtered response if permissions are valid. If no permissions are defined or valid, the request will go through the default callback function. You can use a filter to return custom response instead of executing the default callback. If the filter is applied and the response is null, the system will simply register and execute the default callback function. Whatever the response is, it will then call the REST request after callbacks filter. Next is REST ensure response. If the response is an error, it will be converted into a proper error response object. The REST ensure response function ensures that the current response is an instance of WP REST response. Once this is done, the system sets the matched route and handler and then returns the response. So whatever callback function is registered for our routes or endpoints will be called here and it will check the permissions callback. The permissions callback must be passed when registering a REST route. We will also see an example of this permission callback in upcoming videos. After REST ensure response, this response will be passed through this filter, that is REST post dispatch. It will envelop the response similar to the global parameter envelope we have seen before, which includes the body, status, headers, and other header data into the response itself. After that, the request will be served and the response will be encoded in JSON. Once everything is processed, it will return the results and echo them. Once the process is complete, a die statement will be triggered indicating the process is finished. So now that we have seen how request is matched, let's talk about the callback function. For example, for the posts endpoint, where we are fetching a list of items, if you go to the REST posts controller class here and look for register routes, you can see that there are methods for the get request. This method will be executed when the get request is made and the callback function is get items. The permission callback is also registered for this base route. If you look in the permissions callback, it will first check if there is any context or not. If the context is added and the user cannot edit a post, it will return a REST forbidden context. For instance, if you pass here value of context, edit, it will return the REST forbidden context and respond with, sorry, you are not allowed to edit the post in this post type. Even though it's a GET request, this happens because the context was set to edit. If the context is not passed, it will return true, meaning the user can read the response and access the REST API. Looking at the get items method, it is the callback function that will return the response to the REST API request. So when the get items method is executed, it will receive the request class object as an argument. It will check if the query parameters like order by and other information can be passed to the WP query. Then it will perform other tasks such as modifying the data, preparing the response, preparing the query, including text queries, meta queries, and much more. It will also apply various filters like REST post query, REST page query. You can use these dynamic filters based on the post type to modify or filter the WP query arguments. So here's another filter that you can use. Next, the WP query class object is created and the query will be performed. Once we have the results, we'll check for the permissions and prepare the items for the response. If everything is in order, we'll also set the headers including the XWP total pages and others, and finally, the response will be returned. The response is an instance of WP REST response class and we have used the REST ensure response to ensure that the response is properly formatted. So this is how the entire REST API request execution workflow looks like. It shows how the REST server class identifies the request, parses the request, matches the rule, and based on that sets the requested data such as body, extra parameters, or any other data to the REST request class. Then it executes the callback function registered for that REST route and endpoint. The callback function also checks the permission to see if the user has the necessary permission, then prepares the response, fetches the data, and handles everything based on the REST API request. Finally, the REST response object with all the responses is returned and the response is sent to the user. This is the basic execution workflow for REST API request. Through this process, we also learned about additional filters and actions such as authentication errors to disable the REST API along with other filters. In conclusion, there are actions and filters we can use to modify the response. This can help us to hijack the REST API request if needed or for other use cases. Knowing these actions and filters will make it easy for developers to use the REST API in a better way and implement custom functionality. After this video, you can try out some other REST API endpoints. For example, if I pass here the post ID, that is 1, it will return me the response of a particular post itself. You can also experiment with how this execution workflow looks like and also explore other REST API routes and endpoints, such as the default endpoints for terms, taxonomies, and other things such as post types, post statuses, users. And this is all about the REST API endpoint classes and execution workflow. In the next video, we will look at how we can extend the REST API, how we can modify the REST API response, add new fields, create custom endpoints, and do few other things. Till then, you can explore the WordPress codebase, try to understand how things are working, and you'll learn about all the filters and actions, and may even find use cases where you can apply them. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Jai WordPress.